So it is officially ice season here in Colorado and in many of the states across the US. So we wanted to get started on breaking down ice fishing.
So, welcome to the Level Up Fishing Podcast. I am Andy Cochran,
And I am Stormy Cochran.
and we wanted to come today with some information on an ice fishing checklist that we have created, kind of mostly for ourselves because it's so chaotic a lot of times when we're trying to run out the house with a family and pets and stuff. And so there's certain things that we get out to the lake and we're like, oh man, we forgot that. So we kind of built this checklist and it's been incredibly helpful. A lot of these things might seem pretty obvious, but when you're kind of in a hurry, you easily forget them. So we're going to go over some stuff that you probably already have thought about and some stuff that maybe you haven't that can make your day on the ice a lot smoother.
Yeah, and if you don't know who we are or what we do, if this is your first time listening, we have been guiding here in Colorado since 2006. We have both an open water fishing team and an ice fishing team. And so we have done this many, many times, and it's hilarious because every year we'll still forget something on a trip, especially that maiden voyage. You'll be like, ah, dang it, I forgot this. So we created this checklist just to kind of help ease some of that.
So we can go over, we'll have your kind of obvious must-have things. So we'll start with that. Of course, you need your tackle and your bait and your rods and your reels. And whether you've got a sled or a bucket that you put your stuff in, all your tackle boxes, what are you fishing for today? Do you know what you're fishing for today? Do you need your trout box or your perch box or your do-it-all box? If you're fishing for trophy lake trout and you roll up with your perch fishing box, you might be in trouble.
Right. And having that plan, we do have like a catch-all box, like something that covers every species on the lake, just in case if we're out there doing some perch fishing, but the lake trout are fishing really good, then we want to switch over to that. So we'll usually have some kind of tackle paired with our other stuff, just in case.
So besides your tackle and your method for getting it with you out to the ice, of course you're going to need something to get through the ice. So don't forget your auger. And for anyone that's using power augers, we highly recommend getting yourself a hand-powered auger and just leave it in your truck or leave it in your car as a backup, because inevitably, things can go wrong and you would hate to have to go all the way back to town, or if you're fishing a lake, hours away from your house or something, you have something go wrong with your power auger, or, some event happens where you're completely useless on the ice because you can't get through it. Just having just a cheap hand auger as a backup is an incredibly smart thing to have.
I'll never forget guiding an ice trip, and I was drilling a hole and the entire motor broke off and I didn't have a backup. So I had to frantically call Andy. Luckily, I had already drilled most of the holes by then, but I had to frantically call you to bring me a backup. So I will never forget that ever again.
Yeah, I mean, you never know what can happen. In that case, like the gearbox, sheared in half.
Yeah.
It just wore out and it broke. And
It was crazy.
So, I mean, with gas augers, you can run out of fuel, or they'll get a fouled plug. And so there's things you can have with you to kind of help yourself there, new plugs, whatever. But just having a hand auger as a backup is a really smart idea. And then, to go along with that, make sure your blades are sharp, especially as we get into later in the season when there's a lot more wind and stuff that carries debris onto the ice. The more you cut, sometimes you'll run into an area on the lake that's got sand blown on top of the ice, and all of a sudden, after 3 holes, your auger won't drill anymore because the blades are completely sanded off. So an extra set of blades is really helpful as well. And then, the fuel for all of your stuff, whether it's, if you're running a gas auger, make sure it's fueled up. But then your snowmobile, your four-wheeler, so you'd hate to drive, 6 or 7 miles across the lake and have your snowmobile run out of gas, stuff like that. So just making sure you've got everything fueled up, ready to go. And then propane for your heaters is the other kind of type of fuel. So when we say fuel, for your auger, for your heater, for your snowmobile, four-wheeler, etc. So these are kind of all the must-have things. And the last thing there too is an ice scoop. And that's usually something that you should probably have a backup one of those too, because things happen and it gets crazy and they get kicked in the lake and they sink to the bottom.
Or you're like us and you let your toddlers scoop the hole, and that usually ends up in the bottom of the lake.
Yeah. It's a pretty entertaining piece of equipment for toddlers too, to
Yes.
use it as a big spoon to make slushies or whatever. So have an extra ice scoop is a good thing to have, because scooping slush out of the hole with your hand is not fun.
It's the worst. We've done it, and it is not fun.
It's quite cold.
So, along with that, we have some additional items. Now, we asked our ice team to put this list together, and the must-have items, these are things that you really need to have to make your fishing trip successful. But the additional items just are helpful items. You don't have to have them to go ice fishing, but they do help. So, kicking that off is a fish finder or a graph.
Yeah, of course they're not necessary to have a fish finder at any point, but the more you fish with one, the more confidence you're going to get in what you're doing. You're going to be able to tell how deep you are, if you're in the right section of the lake for the fish you're trying to catch. You can see the fish coming around. You can see them reacting to the baits you're using. Again, it's not a necessary item, but it's a in my mind, it's almost a must-have item if you really want to increase your efficiency on the ice.
And there's so many different ones on the market now at all different price points that you can really find whatever fits your budget and your style of fishing.
Yeah, so you can keep it super simple, and literally just being able to see the water column between your ice hole and the bottom of the lake is kind of the main thing for depth. And all of them are going to read your lure and the fish coming through. And so you can go bananas from there all the way up to live scope and forward facing sonar and all the toys and stuff that has maps on it, so you can navigate around the lake, looking at contour maps of the lake, which helps position yourself in the right areas, etc.
Yeah.
So then from there, of course, your footwear's really important, and it probably kind of goes along with outerwear as well, but waterproof boots. Typically snow doesn't get your feet wet, but when you start drilling holes,
Mm-hmm.
and especially if you're in a shelter with a heater, it's going to have a layer of melted snow right on top of the ice, which can get your feet wet. And so waterproof boots seems like a no-brainer, but you'd be surprised how many fishermen show up in the winter to ice fish that are, just wearing cowboy boots or tennis shoes even.
Yeah.
So keeping your feet warm is going to help you last a whole lot longer in the day.
And I think this should be on the must-have, but I understand that it shouldn't. But seats. I am not sitting my butt on the ice.
And it's hard to stand up all day too.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
something to sit on, even if you're just using your bucket that you use to carry all your equipment out there, you can flip it over and sit on it. So something to sit on is going to help you last a lot longer through the day as well.
And I personally like in the winter on the way you hold your rod over the hole and stuff like that, they make specific like triangle ice seats. They really do make a difference, like compared to your regular like sporting event type seat or
Yeah, like instead of like a square
yeah.
base like camping chair, there's like a three-legged stool that's more of a triangle shaped seat without armrests is probably a more comfortable option. So if you're looking for ice fishing chairs they make these little tri-fold stools, and we found that those are probably the most comfortable chairs to fish off of.
Yeah.
And depending on the conditions, some days we'll fish in a shelter and some days we won't. Shelters obviously are nice if it's inclement weather or very cold, and so you can get in there and get warmed up. It's also pretty fun to be in a shelter when you're on really clear ice, because then you can shield yourself out of the sun, and it's almost like fishing out of an aquarium, because you can see everything going on below you really clearly out of a shelter.
We don't get that very often here. Maybe early season, but as soon as it starts snowing, we don't get to do that very often.
Yeah, we get a lot of snow cover on our ice, but when it's new and clear, it's kind of a fun way to watch what's happening below you too. Out of a shelter helps a lot, just to shield you from the sun where you can see better.
And with the shelter, ice anchors.
Yep, if you're using a shelter, make sure to bring your ice anchors. It's like these giant eye bolts that screw into the ice that hold your shelter down.
Because man, those things can start traveling quick across the ice in the wind.
Yeah, you'll see there's memes and YouTube videos and reels and stuff all over the place about windy ice conditions and shelters blowing across the lake. And if you're trying to run and catch a blowing ice shelter across a very slippery, icy lake, it is not fun, and it's a good way to get hurt. So if you're going to use a shelter, make sure you get ice anchors. Most of them come with them, but they're easy things to lose, and so make sure you got ice anchors with you.
Yeah.
And then they make drill adapters. This is something that can make attaching the ice anchors to the ice a whole lot easier on yourself. Mm-hmm. They make a lot of different drill adapters. They'll even hook into the power head on your power auger. They make adapters for those, and it's just a little claw looking adapter that hooks onto those ice anchors, and then you can use your power head on your power auger or a drill to drill those things into the ice. Makes it a lot quicker. So that's kind of a handy little extra thing to look for.
Come February, late January, February, a heater is an absolute must on this lake. It gets cold.
Yeah, it's, this early ice season, we can usually go out without a shelter and it's plenty warm in the sun. But yeah, when we get in the dead of winter, a heater is, in my mind, it's a must have.
And with that, a lighter to light it. And test out your lighter before you go. We've had that. We're like, yeah, we got the lighter. And we get out there and it's empty or dead or doesn't light.
Yeah, because inevitably your little electric snapping button that's supposed to spark and light your heater's not going to work when you really need it to. So have a backup way to ignite your heater.
Yeah.
So a camping lighter or something, make sure it works. Because we know how well those things work all the time.
Especially when it's 20 below.
So yeah, if you're going to use a heater, bring up a backup ignition source for your heater. That'll help you out a lot too. This is another one that I think gets overlooked a lot. And it's sunscreen and sunglasses. We figure that, it's so cold outside, I don't want to put sunscreen on, but
so not right.
The sun in the winter on a white glaring background is going to burn you so fast, almost faster than being on a boat in open water.
Yep.
We've seen probably some of our most wicked sunburns over the years from a lot of different people from ice fishing. So even though it's super cold outside, and even if you think, I'm just going to be in my shelter all day, bring some sunscreen.
Well, and if it's cold, you're even more susceptible. Like if you don't have a hut and it's windy out there, you're going to have a windburn plus a sunburn. Your skin will be fried. Absolutely fried.
So bring some sunscreen. And we really like to bring a shovel.
Yep.
Like I say, we get a fair amount of snow cover on our ice, and so I like to shovel out pretty much as much of the fishing area as I can. Like say, if you're going to fish in one spot for quite a while, it's going to start getting really slushy all around the hole, and it just makes it hard to maneuver around. It makes it more uncomfortable, It makes it colder on your feet. So having a shovel, and you don't need to bring like a giant snow shovel. They make little packable avalanche shovels or those little fold up military shovels. Something real small and simple that you can use real quick to kind of just pitch all the snow and slush around away from your ice hole. That'll help you have a more comfortable day too.
And this is like really important for, say you're bringing somebody who has limited mobility. Maybe they're older, maybe they have special needs like our daughter Sam. It is really extremely hard for Samantha to walk through snow. I remember last year on Iola, there was so much snow. I mean, like you could almost not drive the four-wheeler because there was so much snow on the ice. And like those conditions are so hard for her to navigate. So making sure that you have a nice clean area to fish out of so it's easier to move around, that's really important.
So, kind of going along with following up with like kids and even kids just traveling around. If you got kids coming, gotta bring snacks and blankets and drinks, and you should probably bring some of that stuff for anybody.
Yeah.
We always put together what we call a go bag. So our crew we say, hey, grab the go bag, and it has, entertainment stuff,
Yep.
and
Toys,
it has
books.
extra clothes, and it has snacks and drinks and stuff in it. So it's just like when you're about to have a baby and you have your suitcase ready and you're like, it's time, let's go. And it has all your essential stuff. Just having a bag ready for whoever's going with you fishing with a lot of different essentials that can keep everyone warm, healthy, and entertained all at the same time can help everybody have a more relaxing day on the ice.
And we always have first aid stuff in it. So everything from ibuprofen to Band-Aids to full splints. No. You never know with kids. And we found the reason we started that is we found our youngest daughter, it doesn't matter if we are going to the desert, she will find water every time and be soaking wet head to toe. No matter what time of year it is, she always finds water. And so we were like, okay, well, we need to start bringing extra clothes and we need to, she always finds a way. So a go bag is a must in our house.
So then just from there, kind of just a couple other things that'll kind of help keep your ice camp a little more comfortable and easier to move around in and keep yourself warm. And that would be rod holders. If you're using like a dead stick technique, a rod holder is really nice to have. So you can have one rod just kind of sitting there and then have another one in your hand. They make different ones that hook to your shelter. They stand alone on the ice. They hook to your chair. They hook to your bucket. There's all kinds of different types and styles of rod holders. Ice cleats is another one that they're pretty inexpensive things that you can get and just have maybe even in your go bag, because we get a lot of snow cover, but early ice season especially, in a lot of areas like in the higher mountains of Colorado that get a lot of wind, that snow cover can get removed like overnight. And so a pair of ice cleats is really going to help literally just be able to stand up on the ice. So have some of those around pretty much all the time. And then the last thing that we really use a lot of, especially in our ice hut, is we bought some foam tiles.
Yeah.
And they're really inexpensive, and it's just this dense foam that kind of hooks together like puzzle pieces so you can cover small or large areas. But just having like a 1/2 inch thick piece of foam between your feet and the ice makes a huge difference in how warm your feet are.
Yeah.
And then that also allows you to have a spot that you can kneel down on or sit on that keeps you dry also at the same time. So cheap foam tiles are a really handy thing to always have around, especially if you're using an ice hut where you're going to be kind of stationary for a long time. It'll help you be a lot more comfortable throughout the day.
Another thing that is actually not on this list, I'm sitting here looking at this like, what in the world is all your safety gear? We're going to have to update this list now that I see that. But we didn't put your spud bar, your ice picks, your ice suit. They have float suits that you can wear. All of those things are important, especially if you're on new ice.
Yeah, and we carry all this stuff in our sleds when we're headed out every day for the ice fishing stuff is yeah, ice picks. And then we carry a throw bag, which is
Yeah.
kind of common for like rafting trips and stuff where it's just a rope coiled up inside a little bag that has kind of a weight on the end of it so you can throw it pretty far. So if there's an event where somebody in your party or somebody else's party falls through the ice, you can throw this bag to them and help get them pulled out of the ice without getting yourself very close to where the ice was thin and they broke through. So having a throw bag is a really good thing to have around just for a safety item. And then, you know, when we're traveling to and from the ice, everybody that's walking, or at least the lead person at a minimum, should have some ice picks around their neck. So if they're the ones that break through, they've got a way to get out themselves.
Yeah.
So yeah, good point.
So those are all really important things to bring with you. And there's some I'll never forget. We were once asked by one of the park rangers to never state that the ice is safe. Doesn't matter if it's 24 inches thick, it is never safe ice. So remember that, because even though the ice is 24 inches thick, there could be pressure ridges, there can be all kinds of things that happen that make it to where it isn't safe. Even you're motoring across that ice and it's thick, it's super thick, but you don't see a pressure crack. And we've seen it where guys have lost their snowmobiles in those pressure cracks on this super thick, quote unquote, safe ice. So do not ever think that ice is safe, because there is so much that you can't see going on.
So yeah, if you ever hear us say the ice is safe, you can call us out on it, because
Yeah.
we don't use that term. What you'll hear us say, fishable ice, and that's the difference between ice that's should be thick enough for you to stand up and walk around on without worrying about it, but that certainly does not mean that it is safe.
Yeah, so always bring your safety gear, because you just don't know. We had a guide go through, and it was later in the season, but the ice was thick. It was thick around the edges, and he still broke through 12 inches of ice because it wasn't stable ice underneath. So be sure to keep an eye on that, especially now that we're just getting started into ice season. There's so many guys that are like, I just have to get out there, and they're fishing on very thin ice. It blows my mind every time. I'm a person, I'm like, I want like 8 inches of ice. I want to drive a Mack truck on that ice before I go out there. So, and then lastly, you got to carry all this stuff out there somehow. And our team highly suggests that there are several different type of harnesses now that you can use. They wrote it down as a deer drag harness for hunting, but there's lots of different harnesses that you can hook to your sled.
Yeah, Chappelle, Eskimo, Clam, everybody makes a sled pulling harness specifically, for those companies, but it's rather than just having your rope and pulling it behind you, having a harness that you can hook around your body and use your full body to pull the weight of that sled is going to make it so much easier to pull out on the ice. And then your hands free and you can be more stable and you can check the ice in front of you with your spud bar as you go. So if you're on foot and you're pulling stuff with a sled, getting a harness for it to pull it around is a way more comfortable way to go.
So we will have this checklist available for you to download. It'll be in the show notes on this podcast on our website, not on YouTube, but on our website. And you can download it and just use it however you want. We tape it to the garage door, so as we're leaving, we can check it off, or as we're prepping the night before, we can see it and have it ready to go.
So yeah, hopefully some of this stuff will help you out. Thinking of something you might not have thought of.
Yeah.
And as we get into this ice season, it'll all become routine at some point, but especially early ice. I think this has been a really helpful list for us just to keep everything in order so that when we get out there, everything is a full go and we can just concentrate on fishing.
Yeah. So thank you for listening to another episode of the Level Up Fishing Podcast.
And hopefully we will see you on the water.
Or ice.